My name is Ethan Walker. I'm 34 years old and currently serving as a staff sergeant in the United States Army. I work in logistics and systems automation, which basically means I make sure our supply lines and mission-critical processes don't fall apart under pressure. I didn't exactly choose this path by accident. My father was Army, so was my grandfather. Growing up in a small town in Ohio, I didn't see many options outside of the military, and honestly, I never wanted one. I've always liked structure, rules, and knowing where I stand. Most people describe me as quiet, maybe even distant. That's fine. I'm not the guy cracking jokes in the mess hall or trying to charm my way through the chain of command. I do my job, I do it well, and I don't ask for praise. My teammates know they can count on me to stay calm when things go sideways, to keep the trucks moving and the systems online. That's always been enough for me. Discipline comes naturally. I don't cut corners, and I don't chase recognition. What I do chase is efficiency. I hate wasting time, hate doing the same fix twice. So when I'm off duty, I tinker. I build tools to make our lives easier. Most of them never leave my laptop, but every now and then, something clicks. I don't talk about it much, but if you're here to listen, maybe it's time I told this story. You can do everything right in the Army and still be invisible. I followed protocol, hit my deadlines, and never missed a system check. But to Lieutenant Colonel Morgan, I was just the tech guy. He never said it out loud, but you could hear it in the way he handed me tasks. Like I was just a set of hands, not a mind. He praised the loud ones, the officers who looked good in briefings and repeated ideas I'd floated a week earlier. Meanwhile, I stayed in the shadows, writing scripts that saved hours, catching problems before they hit. No one noticed. Morgan called me reliable. That's what he said during my last review. Not exceptional, not innovative, just reliable, like a wrench that never rusts. I took it, smiled, nodded, but inside I felt it, that weight, that quiet burn. I wasn't hungry for medals or speeches. I just wanted someone to recognize the system wasn't running on charisma. It ran because people like me didn't let it break. So I started building something for myself. Not out of ego, but out of necessity. Our logistics system was slow, outdated, and full of friction. You'd spend more time logging a request than moving equipment. I knew we could do better. So every night after duty, I went to work in my garage. No Army laptop, no government connection. Just my own machine, built from scratch, same way my dad taught me to fix engines when I was a kid. The machine didn't care about rank, it just ran. The first version of the AI was rough. It couldn't even track pallets between two sites without freezing. But I kept going. I worked through dinner, skipped weekends, ran test after test. I'd sit on the concrete floor, surrounded by empty mugs and power cords, watching log files scroll like a heartbeat. There was something calming about it, the silence, the control. Out there, no one was interrupting with new priorities or changing deadlines. I was in charge, and the only thing I had to answer to was the truth of the code. I didn't tell anyone. Not my squad, not my friends, not even my brother who'd always wanted me to leave the Army and start a tech company. I didn't post updates or screenshots. I didn't share mock-ups on LinkedIn hoping for validation. This wasn't a side hustle. It was a lifeline, a project that kept me sane in a system that never saw me. I coded in the dark, in the cold, fingers numb but brain sharp. I kept backups on external drives and logs printed out in binders. Not because I was paranoid, because I knew how this worked. 6 months passed like smoke. The tool got smarter. It could predict supply drops before command even issued them. It flagged inconsistencies in routing orders, rerouted in real time, and synced with open-source data for weather and transport delays. The interface was clean, fast, built for people who had 5 minutes to move a ton of gear. Not for officers making pretty slides. I wasn't building for them, I was building for the quiet ones like me. The guys in the motor pool who never got mentioned. The staff sergeants who fixed the problem before it became an issue. Morgan never knew. He saw me clock in, run maintenance, file reports, and assumed that was my ceiling, that I was comfortable being overlooked. I let him believe it, let him hand out promotions to the smooth talkers. I just kept coding. There's a power in silence when you know what you're building. You stop chasing approval. You start moving like the storm no one sees coming. One night, just after 2 a.m., I watched the latest build compile with 0 errors. It flagged and restructured a mock logistics chain in under 90 seconds. I sat there, screen glowing, hands still. I didn't cheer, didn't text anyone, just stared. This thing I'd built in a dusty garage, with no help, no support, no applause, could change everything. And no one knew. Not yet. That's the thing about being underestimated. It hurts, sure, but it also gives you space. Space to create without pressure. Space to plan your next move while they're too busy looking the other way. I wasn't mad anymore. I wasn't even bitter. I was focused. Because deep down, I knew one day they'd find out. And when they did, it wouldn't be a maybe. It wouldn't be a pitch. It'd be proof, and they wouldn't be ready for it. I wasn't planning on sending it out yet, but something told me to try. Just one quiet email to a private defense logistics firm based out west. No hype, no backstory. Just a link, a PDF deck, and a simple line asking if they'd be open to reviewing a tool built by someone who lives the logistics grind daily. I didn't expect anything to come of it. A week later, they replied. Respectful, but firm. Said the tool was clever, promising even, but not quite ready for enterprise deployment. They pointed out the lack of a refined UI, questioned the scalability, and asked if I had any commercial experience. I didn't argue, didn't send a long defense, just thanked them and sat with it. Honestly, I was okay with that. They weren't wrong. I'd built this for function, not for show. The interface was bare bones, focused on speed and precision, not user experience. It wasn't market ready because I wasn't building for a market. I was building for people like me. But rejection has a funny way of clarifying things. It doesn't kill the vision, it sharpens it. So I rebuilt the front end. I kept the engine, but overhauled the dashboard, made it cleaner, easier to use. I added contextual tooltips, tightened up the flow, and mocked up real-world case scenarios from my own deployments. Things I knew no consultant could replicate. I didn't have investors or a design team. I had memory, sweat, and nights most people slept through. It took another 4 weeks of focused, obsessive work. Every screen, every button, I asked myself, would this save time in the field? Would it prevent the kind of errors that used to cost us days or worse, lives? I tested it against real logistics timelines from my last mission rotation, and when it passed every simulation, I knew it was time. I didn't ask for permission, didn't write a follow-up email. I just sent the updated build, along with a short note, revised version attached. Let me know if you'd like to take another look. No pitch, no pressure. Then I closed my inbox and went for a run. Not to distract myself, but because I had done all I could. I wasn't hoping for applause. I wasn't even waiting for a reply. This wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about proving to myself that I could take a hit, learn from it, and keep moving. That I could take feedback without folding. That I could build something not just to scratch an itch, but to actually make someone's job better. Whether they saw that or not was never the point. But eventually, they did. 3 weeks passed without a sound. I figured that was it. Just another closed door. Then one afternoon, I saw the email. Subject line read, AI Logistics Tool, Beta Request. I stared at it, heart pounding. They wanted to run a pilot test with live data, said the team was impressed with the rebuild. The CTO had already pushed it through a sandbox. Performance came back clean, faster than anything they were using. They asked for a working beta by end of month. Said if it held up in real-world conditions, there might be room for a paid license. I said yes without blinking, didn't ask for terms, just got to work. The test ran for 7 days across 3 active supply chains. The report hit my inbox the following week, task time reduced by 45%, 0 major errors, minimal support calls. I wanted to celebrate, but something held me back. A voice in the back of my mind reminded me who I worked for. I wasn't a freelancer, I was active duty. And while the code was mine, the Army has a long history of making wide claims. What if they tried to take it? What if I'd missed something in the paperwork? That one line buried in a contract that could cost me everything. So I pulled out my original onboarding packet, dug into every clause, every paragraph. I'd signed the standard innovation and equipment use forms. Most of it was boilerplate. Then I found it. Clause 9.7, clear as day. Any project developed entirely outside official hours, without use of government property or networks, remains the intellectual property of the creator. I read it again, then a third time. I printed it, highlighted it, and slid it into a separate folder. Not the work folder, the red one. The one I kept locked with every denied request, every email that started with, unfortunately. I wasn't paranoid, I was prepared. If they came for it, I'd be ready. This was bigger than code. It was about ownership, about not being pushed aside again by someone who thought my time only had value when it suited them. I didn't need to win a lawsuit. I just needed the truth on paper, and now I had it. The tool worked, the numbers proved it, and the contract, in black and white, backed me up. That night, I slept with the folder next to my bed. Not because I was scared, but because I finally knew I had something no one could take away. The summons came in quietly, just a calendar invite with no details. Conference room C, 0900 hours. Attendees listed, myself, Lieutenant Colonel Morgan, JAG Officer Barnes, and a civilian representative from the logistics firm. I knew what it was. I had felt it coming. They weren't going to ignore the demo anymore. They were coming for it. I arrived early, folder in hand. No coffee, no pleasantries, just the contract, the printouts, the receipts. When Morgan walked in, he didn't make eye contact. He just dropped into the chair across from me and nodded to Barnes. She was already typing. The civilian joined last. Polite smile, firm handshake, but guarded. He opened with compliments, mentioned how impressed the firm was, how the tool had reduced ops latency by nearly half. Then, the pivot. He looked at Morgan, paused, then said the words I was waiting for. They had concerns. Specifically, over ownership. Morgan cleared his throat and leaned in. Said that because I was active duty, anything developed that supported military function might fall under Army property. He framed it like procedure, like protocol, but I heard the edge in his tone. He wanted it locked down. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I reached into the folder and pulled out one page. Highlighted in yellow, cleanly tabbed. Clause 9.7. I slid it forward, face up, toward Barnes. She adjusted her glasses and read. Her expression didn't change, but her typing slowed. I spoke clearly, without emotion. The project was built entirely off-duty, on non-government hardware, outside official facilities. The Army had no claim. The clause was binding. Morgan leaned back, crossed his arms, and asked if I could prove it. I pulled out the logs, file creation timestamps, repository histories, IP logs showing every commit from my home network. Nothing touched government servers. Not once. The room got quiet. Barnes stopped typing. The civilian glanced at Morgan, then back at me. No one spoke. I watched Morgan's jaw tighten. He knew he couldn't win this outright, but he wasn't used to being challenged this way. Not with paper, not by someone 2 ranks below. Barnes finally cleared her throat. Said the language was clear. Unless further evidence emerged, Clause 9.7 would stand. The Army had no automatic claim. Morgan opened his mouth, then closed it again. I sat still, not smug, just ready. They had tried to corner me, and it hadn't worked. Every eye in the room shifted back to the paper. One paragraph. That's all it took to change the entire power dynamic. The meeting ended without a handshake. Just nods, closed folders, and heavy silence. As I walked out, I knew the next move was mine. They had seen the boundary. And now, they had to respect it. I kept my voice calm as I laid out the rest. A flash drive slid across the table, neatly labeled, time-stamped, encrypted. Inside were the full dev logs. Every line of code tracked, with file creation dates, update records, and commit history showing clear work after duty hours. I pointed to the summary printout. Local machine only. No access from government-issued devices. No use of classified datasets. All testing was based on open logistics models and public-facing protocols. The source code backups were mirrored on an external drive, time-stamped and notarized. Barnes opened the file and scrolled in silence. The room stayed still, every breath held like a live grenade was on the table. Morgan's fingers tapped against the folder in front of him, not confident. Nervous. I mentioned the IP logs. Every session tracked back to my home network. Static IP assigned to a civilian internet provider, completely separate from any base infrastructure. I even included logs from my firewall showing which ports were accessed and when. Nothing touched DoD servers. Barnes looked over the top of her laptop. Her tone changed, neutral, but final. She acknowledged the validity of the documentation. From a legal standpoint, the project remained under my personal ownership. The clause was enforceable, and my audit trail airtight. The representative from the defense firm leaned forward, said they were ready to proceed, but only if I retained full rights. They wanted a direct partnership, no military entanglement, just me, the tool, and a clean contract. Morgan said nothing. He sat back, lips tight, eyes fixed on the table. There was nothing left to argue. Every attempt to frame it as government property had collapsed under the weight of evidence. And I didn't have to raise my voice once. The moment didn't need fireworks, just clarity. I'd been buried under assumptions for too long. Now the facts were louder than anyone in the room, and they had no choice but to listen. I didn't ask for punishment. I didn't file complaints or send threats. That was never the point. I just wanted credit for what I built and space to protect it. When the meeting ended, I made one request. A transfer. Somewhere quiet, somewhere I could still serve without being tangled in Morgan's politics. The request went through faster than I expected. On the civilian side, I signed the first draft of a licensing deal. The company was fair. They respected the boundaries I had drawn and offered full creative control on future iterations. No drama, just good business. I didn't talk about the meeting after that. Not with the guys in my unit, not even with my brother. Some things didn't need retelling. The only story that mattered was the one I wrote in code, one line at a time, on my own terms. I wasn't trying to win some war. I just didn't want to be invisible anymore. That was enough. Recognition didn't have to be loud to be real. Sometimes, walking away with your name intact is the only victory you need. No rage, no revenge. Just proof that you were always worth more than they were willing to see. So now you know my story. I didn't burn bridges. I didn't take them to court. I just made sure they couldn't take what I built. But let me ask you something. If you were in my boots, would you have done the same? Would you fight louder, stay quiet, or take a whole different path? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear your take, because sometimes the quiet choices carry the loudest weight.